My name is Roshnie Doon. I'm a PhD candidate at the Sir Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies. This afternoon, I would just like to share my findings with you from my study on the returns to field of studies in Trinidad and Tobago, but this is more of a gendered perspective. Often the study of human capital theory has been studied from many different angles, inclusive of education, educational mismatch, schooling, and the field of training that the person is currently engaged in. Focusing on the latter, Becker 1975 explains that there are two different types of training, general training and specific training. Currently, our economy has placed a great deal of emphasis on the development of STEM fields at the secondary level and, and the provision of a fully subsidized higher education system. However, while these activities create a highly educated and diverse workforce, it also creates an imbalance in our labor market demand and supply for various fields, which also impacts the wage structure for that given specialization. A brief overview of the literature on the returns to field of study for Europe, the US, Canada, and Southeast Asia reveals that persons, particularly in the STEM field, traditionally benefits from a higher earnings amongst their workers, while persons in more academic academic fields such as education and in humanities suffer more of a lower wage returns. Often, the reason behind such a difference is due to the nature of the fields themselves and the preference of the employer. Bearing in mind the experience of workers in developed countries, I chose to investigate how the wage returns of workers in Trinidad and Tobago varies by their field of study. In doing so, first I would examine both, both the returns to field of study for a period of 24 years, beginning from 1991 to 2015. I will use this information to illustrate how the returns evolved not only across the wage distribution but also across time, while also highlighting the presence and intensity of skill bias technical change and job polarization, while also bringing focus on the gender disparity amongst the different fields. To assist in answering my research question, I used a sample of male and female workers ages 15 to 65 employed on a full-time basis within both the public and private sector. This sample controlled for a variety of variables, including the worker's potential working experience, the person's marital status, ethnicity, gender, county division, occupational, as well as industrial groupings, as well as their status as either an overeducated or undereducated worker. The main variables of interest are obviously the hourly wage rate and the 11 fields of academic study and technical and vocational study. In order to examine the returns to field of study, I estimated both an OLS and a quantile regression version of the Mansurian earnings equation. Here I use five different quantile segments to capture the impact that the fields would have on the wage throughout the wage distribution, which is likely to vary because the labor market characteristics of the worker is often found to be different across each point of the wage distribution. For purposes of today's discussion, I will just focus on the returns produced by the quantile regression. Based on the results of these regressions, based on the results for men, the returns was found to improve for the majority of fields across the wage distribution for both years, um, 1991 to 2003 and 2004 to 2015. Over time, the returns in social sciences and business declined during during the first cohort, the 1991 to 2003 cohort, but it also improved in the 2004 to 2015 cohort. The remaining of fields, particularly in the STEM area, the returns worsened over time. In addition to this, what I've also found is that the wage decline was also experienced by low and middle income workers because of the difference in their skill composition. Most of the industries preferred semi-skilled and unskilled men as opposed to highly skilled men. Um, this is also linked to the presence of job polarization of middle income and semi-skilled men. Um, as opposed to there was also a high wage increase amongst men who were employed in the high income bracket, and these were more for those who were in the STEM fields and they had a greater integration of highly skilled individuals. In comparison, the returns for women, the returns for a majority of fields improved across the wage distribution in 1991 to 2003. However, there was a great deal of wage erosion at the 50th to 75th quantile. In 2004 to 2015, the wage erosion continued but was more present at the lower part of the quantile, the Q10 to Q50, before it improved. Over time, the returns improved for a majority of fields for women. Looking at table 4, the main findings summarized here show that there was both a wage decrease for middle income women and high income women in the areas of law enforcement, arts, humanities and education, as well as mathematics and computer science. And one of the reasons why is because of the oversupply of female applicants to the GATE program. It created a surplus in the supply of persons in this field. It also led to a growth of highly skilled and semi-skilled women, so that even though there was an easy integration of women in many industries, they did not necessarily derive a wage to reflect their highly educated qualifications. Also, there was a number of women in STEM fields who were now employed in non-STEM fields. Um, in comparison, the wage increase um, was mostly experienced by low, middle, and high income women, but mainly in the STEM field. And this was mainly due to changes in the industry demand and supply the of the workers of these women, as well as the employer preference. They chose to integrate more female women in STEM. There are several policy implications which may arise from this study. This includes the short-lived resilience of small and middle-income jobs, such as well as the presence of skill bias, technical change, and employment polarization, particularly amongst the male population. And these are likely to contribute to the displacement of middle-income workers and the growth of unskilled workers. In order to get past this issue, I propose that maybe there is need to integrate more entrepreneurship type courses within all programs at the secondary and university level. We should try to develop more STEM competencies for persons in non-STEM fields like data analytics. Um, at the labor market level, maybe we should try thinking about retraining and skill development for semi-skilled workers who might possibly become displaced because of job polarization, as well as the use of high impact investments, which not only develops the worker and the business itself, but also contributes to the development, the social benefit of the economy. Thank you. That's the end.
Okay, thank you, Roshnie. Dr. Griffith Charles, do we have any questions? Questions, anyone?
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roshni. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I wanted to ask, in the Caribbean, people perceive that there's less of a gender disparity in income. Have you found that this is so than in other countries, developing and developed? Have you found that this is so?
I well, in terms of this study, remember I looked at the gender disparity and the wage disparity in terms of the returns, right, amongst men and women. And yes, there is a difference. You know, men certainly earn much more depending on their field, and particularly if they are in a STEM field, right, as opposed to a normal academic area, non-science area. But I'm doing further research into into the development of STEM in minority groups, as well as the returns for Afro Trinidadian women in STEM, because this is a really big area that, you know, it highlights the disparity that it doesn't exist. The research isn't there yet.
Okay, so there's no comparison with developed countries.
Yes. I think also the reason why a lot of the findings on this particular area, gender disparity, hasn't been found yet is because we have a general lack of access to data in the Caribbean. I just happen to have all this data for Trinidad because I use this for my thesis. So I would be able to expand for Trinidad and Tobago. In the case of the Caribbean, we also have to take into account the fact that access to data is an issue. And if we can't get access to the kind of data to get this information, that is also a limitation to future studies as well for developing countries.
Okay, thank you very much.